Well, second, I said your message. And my advice would be, and remember, this is after you've done all the things that Matt has already talked about. Pick 3 issues that you're going to talk about. And as I believe you've already heard today, although I wasn't here, feel free to ignore the question. So they ask you one of the stupid damn questions that reporters always ask us. Just answer a different question. They probably won't be paying attention, and the producer back at the station, suppose it's a television room, they'll use your answer. They're not going to use the question anyway. If you have a 20-second, well-thought-out, interesting answer, just use the fact that he asked something as a springboard. And if they really want you to answer the question, they'll ask it again. Talk about your issues in your way. Well, how do you decide what issues? These are 3 political science principles about deciding what issues. First, it has to be relevant to the office that you're running for. People often ask me, what would you do about the Federal Reserve? Well, I'm running for governor. I'm actually in favor of the Constitution, and I don't think that, maybe at a federal level, the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. We should get rid of it. We should manage it differently. I'm running for governor. So if you are running for office at a county level, and the issue that you want to talk about is federal monetary policy, they're going to think you're a nut job. That may be what you actually care about, but that's not the issue that you talk about in answer to questions. It means you have no conception of what it means to run for that office. It needs to be something voters care about. The fact that you care about it is good, but it has to be something that voters care about. Now remember, one of the things we can do is try to educate voters. Maybe you could make them care about something they don't care about now. But one of the things we often have in our platform, for example, is eliminating fluoridation of water. That's an issue that some of us care about. You're going to have a hard time finding a voter who cares about that. So if what you're going to do is try to devote their little bit of attention to convincing them that it's a problem and convincing them that you have the right answer, that's a lot harder than picking something they already care about. Just as a tactical matter, that's a lot easier. I'm not saying that it's a bad issue on its merits, but it's a bad issue politically. Last, there needs to be a large difference between the status quo and your position. Even if it's an issue that voters care about, but we're basically already doing it. So for most people in North Carolina, a lot of them might care about Second Amendment rights or regulation of gun ownership. But in most counties, our laws are not that intrusive. It's going to be difficult, unless you want to really change things dramatically, it's going to be difficult for you to make that issue stick for most voters in North Carolina. So you need to pick some where your position is different from both of the other candidates. And it's actually pretty easy to do. I clicked the wrong one. Stop that. So, for example, jobs, education, municipal aggression, accumulation of debt, the way that we build roads. Those are all things that people care about. If you have interesting, well thought out responses to those problems, and you frame them that way. Now, you could frame them by saying, we need to get rid of the state. That's not going to reach most voters. If instead what you say is that government intervention tends to reduce rather than increase jobs by increasing the regulatory and tax burden on small businesses, they're going to nod. It's the same answer, but it's phrased differently. If you say, I want to make it possible for people to go to the school of their choice with a curriculum that they endorse, that's a lot different from, we're going to eliminate public education. Municipal aggression is 2 things. Within cities, it's the use of eminent domain to take private property for illegitimate purposes. And on the boundaries of cities, it's the use of forced annexation. And you can get details about the problem of annexation, the way that annexation actually skips or donut holes poor neighborhoods that might benefit from having city services. It's simply a means of extorting money from the wealthy, and it harms the poor. If those are the two things that city are doing, you're not saying the state is bad. You're saying why. You're giving people a reason to believe with a specific policy remedy. And again, you can research instances of this in your area that will give people motivation to say, now I want to hear more about that. Debt, either federal or state, there's been an explosion of debt, and in the state in particular, the big change has been basically to violate both the Constitution and a number of statutes. So instead of using GO bonds, general obligation bonds, more and more we're going all the way to TIFs, tax increment financing, which are done completely without any voter, any kind of petition, referendum, whereas general obligation bonds, you have to have a referendum. TIFs are done at midnight behind voters' backs, and you have to pay much higher interest rates because the chance of default is higher. But more and more of our debt is in that form. So instead of saying, I think debt is bad, you're saying we're violating our own Constitution and our own statutes by issuing more and more debt that's actually costing you, the taxpayer, more, and is being done without your permission. I want to end that as a candidate. Vote for me. That's a specific reason why they would. Fact is, those are examples. You may have better ones. But that's the sort of example I wanted to use to say it's framing as much as anything. Because I can tell a perfectly libertarian story about all 5 of those also. And it's the same answer, it's the same policy implication. Your message will not be good at first, so make yourself go out and talk. Suppose you knew you had to run a marathon, and you thought, I'm in bad shape. Would you say, all right, I'm not going to run the marathon until the day of the marathon, because I'm bad at it. In fact, running makes me tired. No, you'd run short distances. For months, if I stopped for gas and there was a Hardee's, I would go talk to the guys in the back, the sort of mock city council that's at the Hardee's having coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning, that have all the answers to all the world's problems. You sit with them for a few minutes, and they're very happy. Now, it was a little easier for me. You know, I'm a Duke professor and I'm running for governor. Do you mind if I talk? That would be fine, yes. But, you know, I'm a candidate for office. I'm a libertarian. They may not have seen anyone before. It's just good. Already, you're ahead. I want to know what you guys think. Can I sit down for a minute? It's really interesting. Lord knows they'll tell you what they think. And they may ask questions. You will give your answers. They will be bad. They'll get better because they'll make objections, and you'll think, you know, that's actually not a bad objection. I have to think about that. So practice. It's actually pretty fun once you get over the fact that it's terrifying. It's pretty fun. They're glad to have you. No, it's because it's the thing only a jerk would do. I want to go back there and talk to those guys in the back, find out what they think. What do they care about? How do your answers work? And if one of them finds a hole in their argument, and they will, then fix it. Practice making it shorter and more interesting and more persuasive.